We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrificed?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex Bomb! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey, Trent.
Hi, Parth. You're looking well.
You're looking well as well.
We have a film podcast.
We do. We have a hard out.
In 11 minutes.
It's true.
For any film people still learning, that means a time that is determined you have to leave by.
Yes.
A strict time.
Basically, my dad and I share the basement. My podcasting setup is such that it's by where my dad has set up his monitor for his work from home setup. And usually I feel like it doesn't really infringe upon our ability to do our interviews, but every now and then.
Doesn't the podcast provide for the household just as much as your father who works for Pfizer? Shouldn't you be able to contest and
I like to think so.
And petition for equal time in the basement?
I'm in Trent. I've brought this up many times, and it's been met only with
hostility.
Yeah,
Nothing
good. But Trent,
yeah. What have you? I don't mean to.
I'd be less hostile about telling you what I've been eating most recently.
Tell me.
So I haven't eaten anything. I pulled a Trent. I haven't eaten anything yet today. But last night, I believe the last thing I ate was the Friendlies cones that you can get from the grocery store, where it's got it's a cone. The inside of the cone, there's chocolate. There's a chocolate covering over the ice cream and nuts.
So sort of like a drumstick.
Yeah, a drumstick. Yeah, with caramel.
Yeah, that doesn't sound half bad.
No, I mean it sounds full good, if you will.
Yeah.
And I had one of those, but I have a qualm, which is that
Tell
for
me.
some reason, in we usually buy 2 boxes of these because they run out pretty fucking fast.
Long-term investment.
But both boxes, the cone was soft.
Oh, lack of proper refrigeration, sounds like.
No, but the ice cream itself is perfectly fine. Nothing else in our freezer has this issue.
Factory defect?
I think so.
Bad batch, bro?
Yes.
Star Wars is
I know.
the bad batch?
I didn't know whether I should go down that route or not.
This reminds me of the fact that, Instagram got its knickers in a twist recently over the fact that, I think it was drumsticks or one of those frozen branded popular ice cream treats. People would buy them, and then someone accidentally left it out on their counter overnight, and then the next morning it still was not melted. And then people did some poking around, and it's very little, percent ice cream.
Is that real?
It's real.
Well, that's good to know.
And then, yeah. Oh, I think I mentioned this on the pod before because I talked about the Walmart salad that I forgot in the back of my fridge for a couple weeks, and it was still
pristine,
a vibrant green. But what are you gonna eat next? Any big plans?
What am I gonna eat next? What the hell? I've never been asked this before. Yeah, I mean, what I had for dinner last night was what you would call rajma, and it's basically beans. It's kind of like chili, but you have it with either roti or rice. So I think I'm gonna have it with rice for lunch. Some leftovers.
That sounds delicious. You texted me 30 minutes ago, and you're like, "Can we record?" Stupid fuck.
Okay, didn't say those last 2 words, but
no, you're just like, "Can we record, Trent? Hope you're having a good morning."
And in that tone of voice, yeah.
And I was doing some yard work for my dad, spreading some mulch, and then I came inside, and my mom was like, "Hey, Trent, there's some lemonade in the fridge for you."
Oh.
And it was strawberry lemonade. They gave me the same courtesy as they do the day laborers. Granted, it was 45 minutes of mild work. The lemonade tastes much better when you
Wonderful.
earn it.
Well, Trent, I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, friend of the show, Sophia Alexis, and I this morning went to go pick up the dog Rudy that we babysit
Parth's like
sometimes.
favorite dog.
It's
on
okay,
Earth.
but Trent, you've met this dog. This dog's a lovely dog.
Yeah, no, most dogs are pretty lovely. Yeah, Rudy's no exception.
Okay. But we went on a walk with him
As
outside,
dogs famously love to do.
and then got back to my house, and Sophia and I shared a lemonade as well.
Wow, how fitting.
Yeah.
You know, the temperature, you need water, you need sugar. Boom.
What we also
and
need
we
is
need
the intro.
We need an intro for the interview, and boom, you know.
Cue the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture.
This week, we'll have Inside Out 2 editor Maurissa Horwitz, and this is part one of what will be a total of 2 parts. But this is the first half of what will be 2 parts. This is
and
part
Trent
1.
definitely didn't forget that this is only the first part.
No, and
we have not re-recording this.
I'm not emphasizing that fact because I said, this is part 2, guys. Enjoy the end of the convo.
I know. We did
it's the
record
first
this interview like last week, though, so I think that was part of the confusion.
I literally don't even remember what our episode last week was.
Last Late Night with the Devil.
So last week was great, and this week is going to be even better.
Yeah, we got to talk with editor.
Wait, this was actually a great interview, though.
It was. We got to talk with editor Maurissa Horwitz. We got to go to a press screening, saw the movie a whole 2 days early.
While all you fucks were at home wondering
God.
what happened in
What the
Inside Out
fuck?
2 for 2 whole days, Parth and I, we knew, brother. We knew.
We did.
And we had a, what's it called? There was like a lock on our ability to talk or tweet or letterbox about
An
it.
embargo, yeah.
An embargo. We were embargoing.
Yeah, well, we were embargoed. We were under embargo. But this interview is not under embargo.
Not anymore.
Hell yeah.
Not if it's Sunday, bro.
Oh, God.
That's when
But
episodes.
yeah, Maurissa was really awesome. She gives some, I think, very interesting insight into making animated films. If you haven't listened to, I feel like this and Across the Spider-Verse are like two of our interviews that like could like be good dovetail interviews because they really get into the process of animated films.
Imagine if you were like someone who is interested in editing animated films, like for your career, listening to these episodes and the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse episodes. That's not bad.
Yeah.
For free introductory course. But Maurissa Horwitz, our super cool guest, has worked pretty much almost extensively on like big animated films. And this was usually as an apprentice editor or as an assistant editor. And I believe this is her first.
This is her big dog, big feature lead.
This is her first big dog,
like
big
sole
feature
editor on this, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, she's edited like an over-the-hedge TV movie, but Inside Out 2 is obviously a huge step up and has been working on it for like 3 or 4 years. And Parth at the end of the interview was like, maybe we can interview again. And she was like, yeah, maybe in like 3 or 4 years, if the pod's still going.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Well, listener, good luck with this interview.
Part 1, that is.
Okay, well, cue the interview. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Maurissa Horwitz. She's an editor who's worked on such films as Monsters vs. Aliens, and our film for today, Kelsey Mann's Inside Out 2. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Happy to talk to you guys.
So just to start out, what would you say your relationship with film was at a young age?
Well, I grew up in Indiana, so had zero contact with the actual business of entertainment, but loved movies. Like, just grew up grew up. It's funny. I was just putting together a presentation for something else, and I have my Ghostbusters birthday party when I was young. I had a Cookie Monster birthday party because I'm a big Muppets fan. I had basically, if there was a party that was about me, it was also had a movie or TV or animation connection. So, and I certainly remember from a young age, like watching Saturday morning cartoons. I'd never thought there'd be a job in animation for me because I can't draw. But I certainly remember like my dad would always come in and watch Looney Tunes with us. Like that was the cartoon that he loved. And I think it did kind of sink in at a young age that animation is a medium. It's not like a genre. You know, there is something for everyone in animation, and with the right humor, the right story, the right emotion. So it's just really cool to be a part of telling those stories now.
So when did you spoke on sort of the animation half. When did you realize that editing was something you wanted to pursue more seriously?
Yeah. Well, I will say that when I went to college, I was a chemistry major for 3 years.
Whoa.
So I was, yes, I know. So I was taking film studies classes as my minor at Dartmouth, and I really loved them, but it was like a history and theory based coursework mostly there. We didn't have a lot of production. And so, but I loved them, and I kept moving on in chemistry, but and I did a bunch of internships, but I like just was kind of losing my passion for it. And meanwhile, loved every film class. So I did get to do a little bit of production. We made like 16 millimeter films, and that was my first taste of really editing, and I kind of loved editing. So I did an internship out in LA the summer before my senior year because, like I said, I knew no one out there, but I also knew that's where jobs were. So I thought I needed to try it out there and see if living there was a good idea for me. And had this great opportunity. At that point, I really liked camera and I really liked editorial. And it was a small production company called Chanticleer Films, and they were making a sci-fi movie for, there was cable back then. So it was the Sci-Fi Channel movie. And I got a chance to intern in both the camera department and the editorial department. And I just realized very quickly that editorial was what felt right to me. And I was just really passionate about like figuring out a way to put all the puzzle pieces together of the film in like the best way possible. Just was very cool. I loved the teamwork of the editorial, how editorial operates, how much we lean on each other and work together, and just really, finding the best version of the story to make a movie out of.
Great. And sort of jumping forward to the movie of the day, how did you come to be involved with Inside Out 2? Because that's a pretty anticipated sequel and like a big deal.
Yes. Yeah, the bar is pretty high. So I was actually the lead editor on Nimona of Blue Sky Studios, and was loving that. I loved working with Nick and Troy. I loved that project. And then Blue Sky was shut down. So I knew that they were going to do everything they could to try to get the movie finished. But I also knew I'd been through a situation where a movie lost a distributor before. Obviously, it was slightly different, but I just I wanted to keep working, and heard that Pixar, for the first time in a very, very long time, possibly ever, was open to hiring a lead editor from outside the studio, which is, is pretty unusual for Pixar. So I applied right away, and it's really cool at Pixar. Like, they really want people who can work with a variety of teams. Like, I'm staff here. So now that, after I go on a little vacation, I'll help out other films for a while until a new film is coming out of development that maybe I'm a good fit for as a lead. So the interview process was like, I met with 5 or 6 different teams in one day, that were projects possibly getting going. Inside Out 2 was one of those. It was definitely the one I was like, oh, that would be amazing. But I was just hoping to get a chance to work at Pixar. I had applied as an intern, never got the internship. I had applied for a couple of assistant editor positions, never got them. So it was a real dream to work at Pixar. And I was shocked and so excited that Kelsey and Mark, our producer of Inside Out 2, wanted me to be the lead editor. So it was very exciting.
And can you talk about what the relationship looks like between a director and an editor, and sort of specifically as it applies to this movie?
Sure, absolutely. And that is part of what I love about this job, is how closely the director and I work together. The director, the head of story, and the lead editor in animation just work together so much to continue crafting the story and all of its iterations, because we do iterate a lot in the first year or two together. And so it's really important that I'm in sync with the director's vision and like what is serving the story that they're trying to tell in the best way possible. And also Kelsey, our director, any director of animation, is getting pulled a lot of different directions in any given day. And sometimes like forward thinking, like what's the lighting on this scene that we haven't even finished cutting going to look like? Or what is the label on this energy drink that's going to be in one scene going to look like? But I'm like, in the cuts, my team's in the cuts every single day. And so sometimes there gets to be a point where like we're a little bit more aware of actually where the movie is at that moment than he is, because he hasn't come to the review. We're getting him for edit review tomorrow or whatever. So I need to be super in tune with him, because we're kind of the guardians and shepherding the movie along while he's getting pulled a lot of different ways each day.
So just sort of talking about where you came along, did you come, because Pixar movies, I know especially, are extremely long processes to get made. How early on in the process were you involved?
Yeah, so and this one was actually like a 3-year process. I'm not actually sure how long development was, but I don't think it was excessively long. But I was basically, as soon as there was a script approved, I was one of the first people hired on, and I was actually hired on before my first assistant editor. So I was actually just working on a presentation for something else. So I know that I was on for like 1,100 days. So just over 3 years on this movie. Which means I really was like here through every single iteration, everything we tried. The first version we put up of this movie, we do these internal screenings anywhere from 12 to 20 weeks usually. And the first version of this movie looks nothing like the final movie. Riley played ukulele in that version of the movie, not hockey. So it was radically different. And like 8 new emotions came in instead of 4. So it really the evolution in the first year and a half of the movie is huge.
I've seen Michael Arndt's video essay on like how he worked on Toy Story 3, and they were like, you basically like storyboard the movie and make like a comic book version, I guess, and like play that. So like, what's the process of editing that? Or is it more like working with story, or is there, how much editing does that make sense at all?
So much editing. Yes. And it is so much editing. In fact, like the most creative part of editing in animation is before anything hits animation. So like the storyboard editing, recutting with when we get layout, like that is the super creative, iterative time for us, because it's a lot easier to make changes when it's storyboards and we can just like grab someone down the hall to record our line, because we haven't grabbed our production people, our real actors yet. We're still testing stuff out. And so the movie can change radically in that first year, and it did, especially with this one. So we basically, I'll just kind of run through the process, and if this is stuff you guys already know, feel free to cut it out. But basically, the storyboard artists are given a scene from the script to work on, and they'll board for it can be from 2 weeks to 6 weeks, depending on the length of the scene. And it can, we can end up getting anywhere from 200 panels, 200 individual storyboards to 1,000 storyboards for a scene. And then when we bring those into the Avid, they're basically, each storyboard comes in at exactly 16 frames a piece. So they need to be individually timed, every single frame. And then we have a library of sound effects that we build out the sound world with. And in the first year, we're using reference dialogue, which is just people around the studio that we grab. And we've got, here at Pixar, we have 2 beautiful recording studios, professional level with engineers. So we can do it in there. Or my assistant editor, Caroline, has a microphone in her office where if we just want to try a bunch of lines real quick, that's great to just be able to run in there and do it. So we're building out the scenes with that reference dialogue, the storyboards. When we're building a schedule out, I usually say, for each page of a scene, give editorial 1 day. So if it's a scene based on 5 pages, we need 5 days to cut it and build it out. Sometimes when we're first building, we haven't done any sound effects work, because obviously in animation, when you're dealing with storyboards, there's no audio tied to anything. If you want an explosion, you need to find like the 5 different sound effects to make the explosion sound like what you want. And then we're building out music with temp music from other scores, which is, what they do in live action as well. So it is, and then as soon as we have a scene, I like to build a bunch of scenes together before we're showing the director. So if we can get like 3 or 4 in a row, I just think it creates better discussion and better notes about what's working and what we really need to polish. But if we have to, we can just go scene by scene too in our edit reviews. And we have like storyboard artists then come to those edit reviews and they can live draw and send us fixes while we're working, and I can cut them in right away.
Can you go through, go down the hierarchy of like editors, assistant editors, and sort of talk about like the basic division of labor?
Sure. Yeah. I'll start with like our assistant editors with animation, because they are long projects, 3 or 4 years worth of material coming in and out, different stages of picture, different stage of dialogue. You've got reference, you've got our real actors. They do a ton of organizing. They handle all the importing and exporting. So whether it's bringing in picture and sound for the editors to work with, or then sending cuts back out to other departments, they're in charge of all of that. And so like other picture departments won't start working until they have a cut from us. So story is the only one that kind of starts without getting a cut from us. They're starting from the script, right? But every other department after that is waiting for a cut from us. So, there's change notes involved with that. The dialogue is a huge thing for them because they log it. Pixar has amazing proprietary tools and databases. So like, it's really, Amy Poehler did a line 2 years ago. I can find it in like 2 seconds, but that's because of the work the assistant editors do to like transcribe it, log it, put it where it needs to be. We have like bins that are just, joy, sighs. We have a whole sequence strung out of sighs, of screams, for every single character, and they're doing a lot of that work. So they are rock stars at organization. And so then I have a first assistant editor who's obviously kind of managing their workload, and will help cut, when there's time available. John Vargo, he was fantastic. And then we have additional editors, second editors, that I work with that are really doing the bulk of the creative work, cutting the scenes. And so we spread out the scenes between us. I feel like eventually everyone has touched every scene at some point. It's nice to have ownership for a while, but eventually like one person has 3 scenes that need work and one person has 0 just because we're waiting for material. And so, we end up touching everything. And it's nice. I think it's a great collaboration, and it allows you to like, oh, I had an idea for something that I kind of wanted to try for this scene. Like, do you mind? And I never mind. So it's great to get everybody's input on the whole movie. And then I'm kind of like captaining, that, kind of doing a little bit of managing and a lot of creative work as well. So yeah, it's a great team effort, and we really rely on each other every day. But that's what I love about it.
So you talked a little bit about how there were so many different versions of the movie. Mm-hmm. At what point did it start resembling the movie that we get today? Because if she's playing like a ukulele in the first version, like that's pretty far.
Yeah, I'll be honest. The very first one, there's very little from that. Like the alarm did go off and a construction crew came in. But other than that, there's like not a lot that's still in the movie. But like, I think it really is kind of scene by scene, like things start clicking in, not necessarily in order by any means, but just, like the hockey game, we kept reworking it and recutting it. But the essence of that hockey game, after the second screening kind of set that up. And then it was just a matter of finding the right balance of, where we introduced, how we reintroduced the emotions, how much hockey there was, where we put that. There's a recap scene of like where Riley's at and where, everything in the mind world's at. And that came in later. So, it's interesting. I mean, I have to say like the last 20 minutes of the movie that came, I would say that came pretty late, that version. But, as soon as we had it, we were like, oh, this is 100% exactly what the movie needs at the end. It resonated so much with all of us on the crew. So, and like, there's a scene, like the belief system scene that was, I think it was in like either the second internal screening or the third internal screening. And we all loved it, but it was in a very different place in the movie. It was kind of a discovery at the end.
Like the idea of the belief system or the...
Yeah. And like seeing it, getting to be in the belief system.
Okay.
And so it was only then it left for a while because it was a big complicated idea. We couldn't figure out how to put it into the story. But then like in this last year it came back, and the whole crew wanted it back. Like we all loved that set, the idea, and then having it be this place where sadness and joy could have a connection at the beginning of the movie and give us a little quiet space amid like everything else we're doing in the beginning. It felt right. And then we are able to kind of carry it through with anxiety and what she's doing in the world. So that happens a lot, that scenes kind of, they were right. We just didn't have them in the right place. And so it just we kind of keep reworking. And that's why we keep putting it up so often to figure out like, oh, nope, there's a switcheroo there, or we want it, but we're not using it in the right way.
Hearing you talk about being the editor, being more like the captain of the ship, and then there's like so many, you're a lot of like telling or, giving orders, makes me...
I like to think it was a more gentle...
No. I didn't mean to phrase it harshly. But is there a point in the process towards the end where it's fewer people, say like the director and some producers and you, the editor, and it's like you're watching it making smaller cuts with like less people involved, or I guess just I'm wondering about like final cut and stuff.
Sure. And like we are kind of doing as we're building reels and we're getting in the phase where animation is going. And we're also starting to think about Skywalk, getting our sound team involved in the composer. Like we are kind of doing fine tuning, trimming passes. Once we're in animation, it really is like trims or slight extensions. It's a lot less. It's funny, that actually doesn't mean that my edit team gets any smaller, because we're having to feed so many different departments at that point that I still have my same size team. But in terms of like the discussions and evaluations that are getting made on like what can be done, it's really like once things are in animation, it's like very fine, like shaving and filing of edges versus like huge impactful rewrites or redesigns. And like the edit reviews, they can be different sizes. Like if another editor has, if Fiona and Dave were my second editors for the bulk of the past year and a half, and Dave's been on it almost all 3 years. Certainly whenever they had just cut a scene, like they were always in the edit reviews with me and the director and the producer, because I want them to be able to share their thoughts on the cut as well. But sometimes when we were looking at larger chunks and like the executive producers were in there, Pete Docter was in there, like, I would kind of just take all the information and then give it back out to the department after we had, kind of talked it through what we wanted to do with it. So, there's like an ebb and flow to like who's in the room depending on where we're at with things.
So before we start getting into like some more specifics about Inside Out 2, was there any discussion or thought, obviously this is a sequel, of like looking at the first film and continuing certain editing patterns or anything like that? Were you looking at the first movie much?
Totally. No, it's a great question. And actually, nobody told me this. I just took it upon myself. Like after every internal screening that we had of this movie, I would go back and rewatch the first one, because I just wanted to make sure that we were using the same like visual language, the same like style of edits, and choices there to help with the storytelling, so that it did feel like it was still part of the same world. It was part of, the legacy that the first one had built. So, and it was great. Kevin Nolting was still at the studio when I started on this one. So we would meet for coffee and kind of talk about obviously balancing the storylines, like how much information you get from Riley's world versus learning information from the emotions. Like that's a balance we kept kind of having to work through, because it's a lot easier to like do it with Riley, but it's not as fun as learning stuff with the emotions. So anyway, there were just such great resources between having a lot of the crew from the first one still at the studio, and also like just getting to watch that first one.
In the hockey-oriented Inside Out 2 that we have today,
Yes.
Are there any deleted scenes that you are able to speak about?
There's a ton. I actually made a list of all the deleted scenes. There's like 40 scenes that were fully cut and now don't exist in the movie. And that has to do with, like, who were the emotions coming in? what was the story with Riley that we were going for. So, we do like, months and months of work that, we know it's just part of the process to figure out the best version. There's a couple I can talk about. There was one story out in the mind world, and Kelsey's talked about this, so I know I'm not spoiling it. There was a scene called Procrastination Land, and it was out in the mind world. And I don't know if you've heard about this. We had a group called Riley's Crew that were 9 teenage girls across the country from different states, different backgrounds, that we would show our internal screenings to via like a link. And then we would have a note session with them over Zoom and find out like what was resonating, what was feeling true. Like, cause as much as I very much was connecting with my 13-year-old self as we were making this movie, like I know I'm slightly out of touch. So Procrastination Land was always one of their favorites. They're like, oh, that's so me. But the problem was that it was the scene that it needed to happen somewhere in Act 2 towards Act 3. And it really just put the brakes on everything at a time where we wanted to be building to, to the resolution. So it's hilarious. And I hope one day we find a place for Procrastination Land, but we couldn't fit it into this movie. I know. Fingers crossed. But I mean, and so there's fun scenes like that. And then there are other scenes, like at one point, Riley went to a pool party that was full of high school students. It was before she was going to go to a hockey camp. And there's like an awkwardness where she's in that version, she wore what she called her sunny suit, which was like a one piece that had a cartoon sun on it. And she loved that suit, but she got to the party and it's filled with girls in bikinis and very cool high schoolers. And so she's very awkwardly like standing by a table, and like you can hear the emotions in her head going like, what do we do with our hands? Should we lean on the table? And the table starts tipping, and like, should we put a shirt back on? You're hearing all discussion, and it worked so well. And we all laughed every time. And so even though the pool party scene, we had to lose it, that moment we actually saved and put in the film in a scene called Awkward Walk, where Riley's walking with the Firehawks. So even though an entire scene may not work, you learn something from it that you want to find a place for later. And so, it's all productive work, even the ukulele.
What an interview, Trent.
That was great, bro. But what I liked most about it was the fact that there's more.
I would agree.
What
I also
most
like
about this is that there's
that it existed, and that it was a
existed.
lead up for a second part. And like that second part, where would that be released?
So if you've come this far, more power to you, first of all. But yeah, next Sunday, 7 days from now, granted, if you're listening to this on the day of release, which once again would be very nice of you.
I've seen the numbers. You're not, and that's okay.
So 7 days from now, granted, this is a best case scenario. You're gonna tune in to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Pandora. Hear that new inclusion? Wherever you get your podcast. It's not new like we just started putting it on there. It's just new like we just started talking about it. Because Parth said it last week. And I was like, oh, Pandora. Because who even uses Stitcher? And we've been mentioning that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like years. So.
And you can also check us out on our social media. We're on Instagram and on Twitter.
We're at Instagram at Instagram.com and our tag is Instagram.
Yeah, so just search Instagram and Instagram.
Just search Instagram on Instagram. You'll see. We'll pop right up.
Yeah, we should.
We'll be right there.
But other than that, I think
and Twitter.
We've gone past our heart out.
Oh, it's a heart out, which in the biz means Parth has to leave because he hasn't established with his father that his podcast is as important as working
the many thousands of dollars that Pfizer brings us. It's pretty equivalent to this podcast that only costs us money. See you guys next, but in reality, thank you so much to Maurissa Horwitz. Thank you so much to Maurissa
genuinely. Thank you to Maurissa Horwitz. Thank you to her,
the publicist, the whole team at Pixar that helped get us to see the movie and set up the interview.
Yes,
and we will see you guys next week for part 2.